minions, welcome to Crank It Up. I'm Jim Price, and this is a special video unlocked for meeting our fundraising goal for Day of Smashing 2, the second one. I'll be doing a full-length preview of the skeletons as promised. I hope that you enjoyed Saturday's matches. As of this recording, I'm still working on figuring out what is going wrong with the playback, but it's definitely on YouTube's side, so please bear with me. With all of our matching, we were able to raise just under $3,400, which is awesome, and I want to thank everyone who was in some shape or form part of that great event. The skeletons are one of the factions introduced in the 10th anniversary box, and mark the return of burying, first introduced by ancient Egyptians. I really like burying, and I was excited for skeletons when I first started playing them. I'll say up front that one of the pitfalls of podcasting is that my thoughts get frozen in time, and if I ever change my opinion, it becomes public record. The skeletons have had a strange journey for me in that right now, I'm not sure how I feel, and I think my thoughts have covered the complete spectrum at one point or another. They've been consistent, they haven't been, they've been crazy, they've been slow. So right now I am squarely in the middle, not sure what I think of them, and it will be interesting to see how they change. I've already talked about how I like the returned one, and I still do, but it would make more sense to view them through their 5-card identity. But skeletons are also a state machine, so we need to view them through their state transitions, and I'll do both. I will describe the skeletons in 3 states: bury, uncover, and boost. And of course there's going to be overlap between them. Of their 20 cards, 13 enable burying, 10 enable uncovering, and 5 of them enable boost for doing either, with considerable overlap between the 2 categories. In fact, their leader, Lord of Bones, does all 3. After another minion is uncovered, you can place a counter on it. Note that it includes other players' minions, and I have to admit this is rather perplexing, as I almost bet that was a typo or an oversight. It's not just that it's a funbear type of ability, which is at least optional, but it's super rare. Unless skeletons are playing against ancient Egyptians, or a mummy, this is unlikely to factor. The only way this could matter is with the skeleton base, and that's even more confusing because the only time a rival minion will uncover is at daybreak, the word I'll be using for start of your turn. This means that a player hasn't even started their turn yet, so you have no certainty, so why give them even more certainty? So I think of this as mostly boosting your own minions. The talent controls the other 2 parts of the state machine. You can bury a card from your hand, or uncover a card here. This would be a good time to remind viewers that the rules of burying localize the play to the best extent possible. Standardized actions cannot be localized, but everything else is tethered to that base. Lord of Bones starts a trend where there are more cards that serve both states than those that serve individual states. What this means is that there is an attempt to make burying and uncovering as smooth as possible, while also factoring in daybreak uncovering. The returned one is one of those examples. It can create a bury effect, but it can also create an uncovering effect in free capacity. That matters tremendously to Gravetender. In my games with skeletons, I found that they live and undie with these elites because they need card draw to trigger, and it's really easy to draw 2 cards per turn. It's rare that skeletons have a turn where they aren't doing one or the other, making this TDAC's often forgotten cousin, Freedac. They also need overdraw for milling out the Revenant, who seems like it should be what Tenacious Z is supposed to be. For each returned one, you are essentially guaranteeing 2 card draws on successive turns, once on the bury, once on the daybreak uncover. But with the Revenant, it's a free card draw that sets up an extra play. Without sufficient boosts, it's very possible to run out of minions quickly, and the Revenant solves that by always giving you something to play. After the first base, Spooky Scary becomes a much needed mid-game play, to bury a minion of power 3 or less from your discard, and you even get a card. The skeletons have a bit of a cast system problem that can create a draw order problem, and while I was against the card draw initially, now I'm not so sure. It's very possible to draw their cards in the wrong order, and they will probably lose the first base as they are a second half faction. The other double feature feels like a catch-all, and that's Grave Goods. It can bury, it can get Revenants into the discard pile, and it can uncover, with an uncovering reward, but not enough to consider it a boost card. I consider this both burying and uncovering. Even though the skeletons have more burying than uncovering, I find that I favor the burying with this card because it's one of the few cards you can play with them early game. To make up for their bad early game, the skeletons have a really powerful late game, possibly too powerful. You need to set this up, and you know I love payoff cards, but I'm not sure this may be too much. They have a very powerful combo that starts with Place Them Down. You can bury up to 3 minions of power 6 or less. Internally, this would be 3 returned ones, and you get a Revenant for free, and at daybreak you can uncover all of them. That would be 9 power from 4 minions with potential boosts. For example, if you play Lord of Bones, then you play Place Him Down, then use Lord of Bones to uncover a returned one, you get that 9 power plus 4 counters. With Lords of Bones himself, that's 18 power with 2 cards from hand and a ton of synergy potential. Gravestones can boost you up another 4, and that card can stay in play all game long. But with an extra action, Dig 'em Up can immediately play all those cards, or better collections of cards with synergy. With Burying, the real test for me is what is Burying? Am I doing that? Burying is a deferred future extra play that avoids power creep and can potentially provide obfuscation. There isn't much obfuscation in Skeletons, only about 3 cards that do that. And because of talent based on covering, it's very possible for cards to be buried for all of 5 seconds, rather than waiting for a future turn or even longer. And there are enough boost cards that you get the benefits for a bury that is rarely a bury. I think that the Skeletons could have really used a sub-theme here, as all of their cards use the word bury or uncover in some variant, and many of them use both. It gives them strong internal synergy potential, but with an odd effect, which is where my hesitation comes from right now. Because burying is so insular currently, you need above average effects for it to work, but if you hit their ceiling, then crazy things happen. This also creates a weird feeling that the Skeletons have lots of cards that can bury, but have little that they want to bury. I could see burying Dig 'em Up, as it turns 1 card into 3, potentially as a pivotal play. But if I bury Spooky Scary and uncover at the start of my turn, I'm just doing something I could have done a turn earlier, unless I had a bury to spare. While the ancient Egyptians have had their problems, they at least have minions and actions that scream, bury me. I think leveraging timing could have been an opportunity, because Howler type effects would have been a good fit. This is convenient, as it leads into my first pairing, Skeleton Werewolves. Now I loved ancient Egyptian werewolves, and despite the very few talents that Skeletons have, the great talent killer still gets exploited, as Lord of Bones and Graveyard combine to play 2 extra minions for as many as 3 extra counters each. At least this is localized, but the solo potential is extremely strong, on top of the fact that Marking Territory loves burying. Place 'em Down and Dig 'em Up is still fun for Howlers. Looking at a card like Place 'em Down, it seems ripe for exploitation, and this is where we get a lot of our synergy, so we have to talk about Shapeshifters. Lord of Bones and 2 Mimics is less than 6 combined, and 3 Mimics is also less than 6. While Dig 'em Up may be localized, Place 'em Down is not, and the Skeletons do have pivoting potential if they play the right card at Daybreak. This gives them a surprise 15 or more with Dig 'em Up and other boosts. You've got great Gelf targets, even the Revenants, as you can get them out early and get them going. Or you can get Mimics out early and play them all game long with Spooky Scary without power creep. The Skeleton Recursion helps the Shapeshifter minion starvation, and the upside here is tremendous. You can even play this combo faster early game, as you can transmogrify a Revenant to get someone else out, only to immediately rebury that Revenant. One of the nice things about the returned one is that it lets you bury it immediately, and uncovering, if it can happen, is always free if there is another buried card there. This makes it very good for Venus Mantrap and Critter Champion. It's really hard for Venus Mantrap to be used multiple times because it's localized, but now you aren't adding any power creep. You still get the benefit of burying Overgrowth. With the Killer Kudzu, you get the best of both worlds, as you get Limbo Power and Burying, 2 highly unblockable forms of burst. For the Critter Champion, it leaves play, so they linger as well, and I like the idea of choosing an assortment of recruits for Place 'em Down, plus the fact that Critter Coach can be one and you still get a 3rd minion from your deck. With Skeletons, I seem to have the most fun exploiting their top tier cards and trying to do as many crazy things with them as possible. Given that they have some locality in their plays, movement is really important because it means Lord of Bones buries a minion for Graveyard to immediately play, getting 2 to 3 counters and moving that minion off to keep the engine going. My preferred play is pretty unblockable because it can take many forms and has a lot of pivoting potential. For Place 'em Down, you want your minions to be something like a Returned One, Scoundrel, and Ghost Knight, with a Revenant there too on its special. Lord of Bones can bury Dig 'em Up, which is a standard action that can uncover all 4 of those. You get a ton of power counters, and part of it is mobile, but you could also swap out the 4 for Walking Carpet or Space Prince. If you take the non-movement option, and assuming that all are uncovered on gravestones, Ghost Knight is a 2, but grants 6 power to everyone else. That's 23 power, and you've barely started your turn. A simpler form is Ghost Knight and 2 returned ones and a Revenant. You've committed 0 power, and you have the potential to get 25 power at the start of your turn. That's enough to take out some really big bases. Is this telegraphed? Well, Skeletons have a way of making it not be, especially if Scoundrel is in the mix. As you can see, I have a range of feelings around Skeletons. Some of their cards are individually extremely strong because their cards aren't bad overall, their circumstances are just specific. That might be why I sometimes feel that they are inconsistent, but maybe they are a support faction who supercharges the right partner like an Aladdin type. More and more games will refine that opinion, but the good news is that it won't be long before you get to play them and form your own opinion. What are your initial impressions of skeletons? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's shut it down.